You don't notice it happening at first. That's the strange part. You don't wake up one morning feeling broken. You wake up feeling heavy. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Your body moves. Your mind responds. You do what needs to be done, but something inside you feels permanently switched on. Like it never fully powers down. You still show up? You still answer messages? You still get things done. And because of that, no one questions whether you're okay. Not even you? You tell yourself this is normal. Everyone's tired. Everyone's busy. Everyone's carrying something. You convince yourself that what you're feeling doesn't deserve attention because it doesn't look like a crisis. There's no breakdown. No obvious failure. Just a quiet, constant depletion that you keep pushing through because that's what you've always done. Strength became your default setting long ago. At some point in your life, maybe early, maybe gradually you learned that stopping wasn't an option. You learned that things didn't pause just because you were overwhelmed. That responsibilities didn't soften just because you were hurting. So you adapted. You adjusted. You kept going. And people noticed. They noticed how reliable you were. How calm you stayed under pressure. How you handled things others avoided. What they didn't notice was the cost. They didn't see the way you mentally rehearse conversations before having them. Because you're too tired to deal with misunderstandings. They didn't see how often you swallow your own needs because it feels easier than explaining them. They didn't see the way your patience isn't endless, it's borrowed from your own well-being. And over time, you stopped seeing it too. You started calling exhaustion discipline. You started calling emotional overload maturity. You started calling survival strength. But there's a difference between being strong and being depleted, and no one ever taught you how to tell them apart. You've been holding things together for so long that rest now feels unfamiliar. When things get quiet, your mind doesn't relax, it scans. It waits for the next problem. The next demand. The next thing that needs you. Peace feels suspicious, like something you haven't earned yet, so you stay alert. Even at night. Especially at night. That's when the noise fades enough for the weight to show itself. When you finally sit still and realize how much you've been carrying. When your chest feels tight, not because you're anxious about one thing, but because you've been fine for too long. You think, why does everything feel harder than it should? You think, why am I tired, even on good days? You think, what's wrong with me? And that's where the lie creeps in. You start to believe you're weak. Not openly. Not consciously. Just quietly, in the background of your thoughts. You compare yourself to people who seem energized, motivated, on top of their lives. You wonder why you can't do more, handle more, push further the way you used to. But what you're missing is this. They aren't carrying what you're carrying. They aren't managing what you're managing. They didn't learn to survive the way you did. You didn't become exhausted because you're incapable. You became exhausted because you've been capable for too long without relief. There's a specific kind of fatigue that comes from being the one who always adapts. The one who stays composed. The one who absorbs stress so others don't have to. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't demand attention. It just slowly drains you while you continue functioning. And because you're still functioning, you assume you're fine. But functioning is not the same as being okay. You don't need a breakdown to justify rest. You don't need to fall apart to prove you've been carrying too much. You don't need to hit rock bottom to admit you're tired. Yet you've trained yourself to believe that, unless things are falling apart, you should keep going. That belief is why you feel guilty when you slow down. Why you minimize your own exhaustion. Why you tell yourself, others have it worse. You learned to measure your worth by endurance, and endurance will always ask for more than you can give. Here's the part no one says out loud. Constant strength without recovery isn't resilience, it's erosion. It wears you down quietly. It dulls your joy. It shortens your patience. It makes rest feel like failure instead of necessity. And the longer you live this way, the harder it becomes to remember what rested feels like. You start thinking this is just adulthood, just life, just the way things are now. You lower your expectations for yourself not because you want less, but because you don't have the energy to want more. You still care? You just care while tired? You still love? You just love while depleted? You still try? You just try with a battery that never fully And that's why this matters. Because nothing about this means you're weak. It means you've been strong in environments that didn't give back. It means you've been responsible without support. It means you've been resilient without rest, and there's a limit to that. Not because you're failing, but because you're human. There's something inside you that's not asking to quit. It's asking to be acknowledged. It's asking for space, for relief, for permission to stop performing strength for a moment and just exist without holding everything together. You've been treating exhaustion like a personal flaw instead of a signal. A signal that you've been running on obligation instead of capacity. That your life has been asking more from you than it's giving back. And you can't fix that by pushing harder. You don't need more motivation. You don't need tougher discipline. You don't need to get it together. You need something far quieter and far more difficult. You need to stop seeing rest as weakness. Because the truth is, you're not weak at all. You're exhausted. And exhaustion doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been carrying weight without being allowed to put it down. There's a moment quiet, almost invisible, when exhaustion stops being physical and starts becoming emotional. It's when rest doesn't feel refreshing anymore. When weekends don't reset you. When even things you once enjoyed feel like effort. That moment isn't failure. It's awareness trying to get your attention. But instead of listening, you've probably done what you were taught to do, override it. You tell yourself to push through, to be grateful, to stop complaining. You remind yourself of your responsibilities, your goals, the people who depend on you. You convince yourself that slowing down would be selfish, irresponsible, weak. So you keep going while quietly resenting the fact that you have to. What no one prepared you for is this. Exhaustion changes how you see yourself. It makes you impatient with your own limits. It makes you harsh with your own emotions. It makes you believe that needing rest means you're not strong enough anymore. But needing rest is not a character flaw. It's biology. It's psychology. It's the nervous system asking for recovery after too much output. You weren't designed to be on all the time. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being needed felt safer than being honest. That being useful earned you space. That being reliable protected you from disappointment. So you built an identity around being the one who handles it. And now, letting go of that identity feels terrifying. Because if you're not the strong one, if you're not the dependable one, if you're not the one who holds it together, then who are you? That question alone keeps people trapped in exhaustion longer than anything else. You're afraid that if you stop pushing, everything will collapse. That people will be disappointed. That opportunities will disappear. That you'll be exposed as someone who can't actually keep up. But here's the truth, you don't hear enough. Not everything that depends on you deserves access to you. Some responsibilities grew out of habit, not necessity. Some expectations were placed on you because you never said no. Some pressures exist only because you've been carrying them silently. And exhaustion is often the result of never renegotiating those terms. You don't need to disappear to rest. You don't need to quit your life to recover. You don't need to justify your limits with a breakdown. You need internal permission to stop treating yourself like a machine. Real strength isn't the ability to endure endlessly. Real strength is knowing when endurance has turned into self. There's a subtle shift that happens when you finally accept that. When you stop asking, "Why can't I handle this?" and start asking, "Why am I handling all of this alone?" That question changes everything. It moves the focus away from self-blame and towards self-respect. It allows you to see exhaustion not as weakness, but as evidence of how much you've been carrying without relief. And once you see that, something inside you softens. You start allowing pauses without guilt. You start choosing rest without apology. You start noticing how much energy you were wasting, proving you could cope. You don't suddenly become lazy or unmotivated. In fact, the opposite happens. When you stop draining yourself, your clarity returns. Your patience improves. Your motivation becomes quieter but more stable. You begin to move from obligation instead of urgency, from intention instead of pressure, from capacity instead of guilt. And slowly, very slowly, you relearn something you forgot. You don't owe exhaustion to anyone. You don't owe the world constant availability. You don't owe people your emotional labor by default. You don't owe productivity at the cost of your health. You owe yourself sustainability. That doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes honest. You stop pretending you can carry more than you can. You stop measuring your value by how much you endure. You stop romanticizing burnout. And in that honesty, something powerful happens. You become calmer. You become clearer. You become more selective, not colder, just wiser. You stop saying yes to things that drain you simply because you've always said yes. You stop forcing yourself to keep up with timelines that don't respect your reality. You stop seeing rest as something you'll earn later. You start treating rest as part of how you function. And the world doesn't fall apart when you do. Most of the time, nothing catastrophic happens at all. People adjust. Systems adapt. The expectations that were never fair begin to loosen. What changes most is you. You feel less resentful, less tense, less like you're constantly catching up. You realize that strength doesn't disappear when you rest. It becomes more precise, more intentional, more sustainable. You don't lose who you are when you stop pushing. You rediscover who you are when you're not exhausted. And that's the part no one tells you. Exhaustion doesn't just take energy, it distorts identity, convinces capable people that they're failing when they're actually overloaded. So let this land clearly. You are not weak for needing rest. You are not failing because you're tired. You are not broken because you can't keep carrying everything. You are human, and you've been strong for a long time without enough support. Strength kept you going. Rest will help you last. And the moment you stop fighting that truth, life doesn't shrink. It finally becomes breathable.